Cataclysm Classic is coming and people won't stop complaining that they can't get a raid spot, okay? Let's fix that today. Let's talk about the specs that everybody wants in a raid. Because if you are a raid leader and your roster doesn't have a certain spec, people are gonna look at you like you are getting peed on by a homeless guy. First of all, I feel that the one that everybody got in their mind, and for good reason right away, is gonna be the Discipline Priest. Now, the Discipline Priest has a lot of important utility that is very hard to make up with other healers, Power Word Barrier in particular being a super busted spell. It reduces raid-wide damage by 25%, and the barrier glyph, that's a glyph that increases your healing during it. Of course, if you're reducing healing, that's because you're popping that cooldown when people are taking a lot of damage, so being able to heal more when people are taking a lot of damage, that seems like a really good deal. And not to mention the shield spamming meta is still somewhat there. There is a cooldown now to the Power Word Shield, okay, but it is shorter than it used to be back before Wrath of the Lich King. And with the new glyph, the Power Word Shield glyph, you can get a heal every time you glyph, 20% of the value of the shield, I think. So they are very good emergency healers at the same time. There are a couple progression fights in Cataclysm where the tank cannot feasibly survive the damage without a cooldown. And in every one of those scenarios, being able to shield them is maybe gonna save your tank a really important cooldown for later. Power Infusion is also a really good talent. It's also like a cooldown you can put on a DPSer, a caster DPSer, and they are gonna do a lot of damage. You throw that thing while people are throwing Bloodlust, and boom, you got a bunch of damage. Overall, the Discipline Priest may not be the highest pumper in the healing department. He's not gonna show up in the meters at the top usually, but there are so many important tools to deal with mechanics inside the Discipline Priest that you really cannot do a 10-man without one. I mean, you can, but people are gonna look at you like you're getting peed on by a homeless guy, that's what I said. Next in the list is gonna be the Hunter. Now, there are all three Hunter specs that are viable in Cataclysm. You can go whatever. I am not gonna spend a lot of time breaking down each spec here, but this is not really spec related. That's the good part, okay? First of all, you got Tranquilizing Shot. Tranquilizing Shot is a baseline ability for the Hunter. It is super important to stop enrages in certain fights. It is also a purge, and there is a lot of fights that need a purge, especially in a 10-man where purges are not very common. You only got so many shamans. Getting this thing for another purge is super important. But the most important part of the Hunter is that they got every buff, okay? As you guys know, in Cataclysm, a lot of the buffs that were unique to a class, like Wind Fury or something like that, they became a generic buff that other classes can bring for redundancy, because they didn't want to force people into bringing a certain class to do a buff for them. Bring the player, not the class. Okay, the thing about the Hunter is that thanks to their pets, they have every freaking buff in the game. The Hunter is designed to fill in the gaps of your roster to fix what buff you are missing. Depending on the type of pet they take, you can bring many buffs. Now, there is a spec in particular, Beast Mastery, they can take even more pets, so that's kinda cool, but I'm gonna break it down really quick for you. Exclusive to the Beast Mastery pets, a Hunter can bring a 25% Mortal Strike debuff. That's okay, I guess. It doesn't really matter for PVE, but they can also do a 25% Curse of Tongues AoE. That's for slowing down the casters. And now they can even bring Bloodlust into the raid if you are missing it. But for the baseline Hunter's pets, you can get a cachillion things too, okay? I'm gonna do it in rapid fire here. I got my notes. You can bring 5% crit, 20% armor reduction, 1400 strength, 30% extra bleeding damage, that's Mangle, 20% attack speed reduction, that's Thunderclap, attack power reduction, that's Demo Shout, 5% extra physical damage, 8% extra magic damage, 1500 stamina, 5% total stats, and the strength and agility buff. Not to mention, pets can also go for interrupts, disarms, and stuns too. And that is also really important, okay? There is a bunch of fights, and yes, stun locking is a part of a lot of fights in Cataclysm. That is one of the reasons that the rogues do not suck Gloria Gainor's butt anymore, okay? Stun locking is actually important in some parts, disarming of course. Not every raid is gonna have a warrior anymore. So yes, Hunters do not bring anything particular that nobody else can bring, but at the same time, they compensate by being able to bring everything. So if your Hunter is smart, and yes, I know that's not an easy find out there, you can get really valuable utility from them. Another important spec that you want to bring into the table is the Prot Paladin. What does the Prot Paladin have going for it? Well, everything. Again, if Blizzard doesn't mess with the balance, the Prot Paladin may start a little weak in the first tier because he's supposed to have mastery that he doesn't have, but by the second tier they will be a force to be reckoned with, and by the third tier they are gonna be really tanky, and by the most part they are gonna be the best equipped to handle the mechanics of raids. The Prot Paladin has 12, yes, 12 defensive abilities to pop, okay? The Blood Death Knight, for example, it is a tank that is all about active mitigation. It doesn't have any passive defense, and they have half the abilities for defense that the Prot Paladin has. Do you understand how stupid that is? And once you stack the mastery to get block capped, that is avoidance capped, you are gonna take at most 70% of the damage you are supposed to take every hit, not to mention you are gonna have a bunch of cooldowns that also scale with mastery. The best part about the Prot Paladin in particular, because let's say it doesn't matter what tank you get as long as the tank is very good, okay? The Prot Paladin can bring something very good, and it is a raid-wide cooldown to reduce the damage of all the raid except you. The tank is still gonna take full damage though, but everybody else is gonna take 20% less damage. It is a second discipline priest for free. If your raid is not very good, the Prot Paladin becomes even better because of that. I will also drop here for DPSers 3 very important classes for DPSing, and I think they are important for the same reason. That's why I'm gonna drop them all together here. And you see, and I mean, they were really into this in Cataclysm back in the day. I don't know why the raid designers were so into this, but many fights have different ad spawn mechanics with DPS checks on them. That means you gotta kill the ads really fast or you wipe. The most infamous, of course, is the Spino Deathwing. Pre-nerf, it was super hard to deal with, I think everybody remembers that. Basically, what you need is a bunch of burst damage, and you need that burst damage in cleaving form. There are 3 specs that are downright excellent in being able to deal with these fights, okay? The Elemental Shaman, the Rogue, and probably the best, the Arms Warrior. All of these 3 classes have some really good burst damage ability that affects 2 or even more targets, and for example Whirlwind or Blade Storm or the super busted Chain Lightning. Pre-nerf, Spine of Deathwing was so particularly bad, people had to stack these 3 classes to even kill it. If I recall correctly, the world first kill of Spine of Deathwing was 3 rogues, wasn't it? Which is downright hilarious, but don't get me wrong, the Warrior, Rogue and Shaman are really doing good damage anyway. They are really good DPSers, albeit at different times in the expansion when they thrive. For example, the Rogue and the Warrior like to thrive a little later on. Meanwhile, the Shaman is one of the best DPSers in Firelands, but they are still really good. This has the caveat, of course, that they are not brought in for the utility, except perhaps the Shaman is kinda cool, so you are actually gonna need to be a good player to get in groups with them. But the upside is that if you have decent parses, people are gonna be all over you. A 75 parsing Arms Warrior, for example, is gonna deal with the pimples in Deathwing's back a lot better than a 99 parsing Warlock, because life isn't fair. Now, if you know a blonde woman that is gonna help me deal with the pimples on my back, you should subscribe, leave a like, join the Discord, and thank you for watching. Gotcha.